Nadine Ashford stared at her phone screen until the pixels blurred. Then she locked it, set it face down on the kitchen counter, and poured herself a glass of water she wouldn't drink. The post was still there. She knew it was still there because the internet doesn't forget, and because her best friend Ingrid had already texted her 4 times in the last 11 minutes, each message more frantic than the last. Nadine hadn't opened any of them. She didn't need to. She'd seen the photo herself. It was their lake house, their Muskoka cottage, the one Julian had surprised her with on their 10th anniversary, the one with the green Adirondack chairs on the dock in the bedroom, with the exposed cedar beams. She knew every corner of that place. She'd painted the trim herself, spent 3 weekends on her knees with a brush, while Julian grilled steaks outside, and their daughter Chloe chased their son Miles through the birch trees. And there it was on Tessa Langley's Instagram, a mirror selfie, golden hour light, pouring through the window Nadine had picked out from a salvage yard in Huntsville. Tessa was wearing an oversized men's shirt, Julian's shirt, the blue linen one Nadine had bought him at a shop on Queen Street last spring. The caption read, "Weekend getaway. Some places just feel like home. Some places just feel like home." Nadine's hands weren't shaking. That surprised her. She'd always assumed that if this moment came, and some quiet, honest part of her had always suspected it might, she'd fall apart. Scream. Throw something. Call him and unleash 12 years of trust in one devastating phone call. But instead she stood in her kitchen, in Leaside, in the house they'd renovated together, and she felt something she didn't expect. Clarity. Not peace. Not acceptance. Clarity. The kind that comes when you've been squinting at something blurry for a long time, and someone finally hands you the right prescription. She picked up her phone again, opened the post, studied it the way she studied campaign briefs at work, with precision, with distance, with the part of her brain that knew how to take something apart and understand what made it tick. Tessa Langley, 29, lifestyle influencer, 43,000 followers, sponsored posts for athleisure brands and boutique hotels. Her grid was curated, polished, aspirational. The lake house selfie had already pulled in over 200 likes in the first hour. The comments were filling up with heart eye emojis and goals and, "Where is this place, babe?" Nadine screenshotted everything. Then she closed Instagram, put her phone in her pocket, and went upstairs to check on Chloe and Miles. Chloe was reading in bed, flashlight tucked under the duvet even though the lamp was right there. She was 11 now, sharp-eyed and suspicious of everything the way 11-year-olds are. Miles was already asleep in the next room, one arm hanging off the bed, his stuffed bear wedged against the wall. She stood in the doorway and watched him breathe for a long time. "Mum?" Chloe's voice muffled through the wall. "Go to sleep, love. Is Dad coming home tonight?" "He's at the cottage this weekend. Work retreat. On a Saturday? Go to sleep." Nadine pulled the door shut and leaned against it. Work retreat. That's what he'd told her. A partner's retreat for the firm. Bonding, strategy sessions, maybe some fishing. She'd packed him a bag. She'd kissed him at the door. She'd told him to drive safe because the 400 gets dicey past Barrie. She went to her home office, sat at her desk and opened her laptop. For the next 2 hours she didn't cry, didn't pour a drink, didn't call Ingrid back. She worked. Nadine Ashford was a senior strategist at one of the largest media buying agencies in Toronto. She'd spent 15 years learning how to place the right message in front of the right eyes at the right time. She knew how sponsored posts worked. She knew how Instagram's ad targeting worked. She knew, down to the decimal, how much it cost to reach a specific demographic in a specific postal code with a specific interest profile. And she knew exactly what Tessa Langley's audience looked like. By midnight, she had a plan. Not a revenge fantasy, not a tearful confrontation, not a dramatic scene at the cottage. A plan clean, precise, and devastating in the way that only someone who truly understood the machinery of attention could make it. She didn't sleep that night. She sat at her desk, building a media brief the way she'd built hundreds before. Target audience, key message, placement strategy, creative execution. The only difference was that this time the client was herself. Julian came home Sunday evening. He walked through the door smelling like lake water and pine, and he hugged her the way he always did, one arm around her waist, a kiss on the side of her head. She let him. She asked about the retreat. He talked about it easily, fluently. The partners played poker, Someone caught a base. They discussed the firm's expansion into Ottawa. He was a good liar. She'd never noticed that before, or maybe she'd chosen not to. Kids missed you, she said. I'll take them to the X next weekend. Make it up. He went upstairs to shower. Nadine sat on the couch with her laptop and kept working. Monday morning she called her lawyer. Ruth Pennington had handled the Ashfords' real estate closings and wills for years. She was a family lawyer with an office near Osgood Hall, the kind of woman who wore reading glasses on a chain and said, "Let's not be hasty," the way other people said hello. "I need to understand my position," Nadine said. "If Julian and I were to separate." Ruth was quiet for a moment. "All right, come in Thursday. Bring your financial documents. Already compiled them." Another pause. Thursday then. By Wednesday, Nadine had the creative ready. She designed it herself, late at night after the kids were asleep, using the same tools she used for client campaigns. It was simple, elegant, surgical. The concept was this. Tessa Langley's lake house selfie had been posted organically. A regular Instagram post, visible to her followers and anyone who stumbled across her profile. Underneath every Instagram post in the feed, there's a space for sponsored content, promoted posts, ads. And Nadine knew how to buy that space. She created a promoted post, clean white background, black serif font, the kind of typographic restraint that made you stop scrolling. 3 words in bold at the center. "Ha, cheated here." Below it, in smaller text, "That weekend getaway. That's my family's cottage. That's my husband's shirt. And those cedar beams? I sanded them myself." No names, no tags, no photos of Julian or Tessa. Just the words, served as a sponsored post, targeted to appear directly in the feeds of Tessa Langley's followers. The exact demographic that had seen the original selfie. Nadine set the geo-targeting to Toronto, Muskoka, and Ottawa. She set the interest targeting to match Tessa's audience profile. She set the budget high enough to guarantee saturation, and then she scheduled it to go live on Friday at noon. She told no one. Not Ingrid, not Ruth, not her mother in Halifax, who called every Sunday and always asked too carefully, "How's Julian?" Thursday, she went to see Ruth Pennington and laid out every financial document. Mortgage statements, joint accounts, Julian's partnership earnings, the cottage deed, RRSPs, TFSAs, the kids' RIEPs. Ruth looked at the stack and then looked at Nadine over her reading glasses. "You've been thorough. I've had time to think. Nadine, if there's infidelity involved, the court won't." "I know. No fault. It doesn't change the division of assets. I'm not doing this for the court." Ruth studied her. "Then what are you doing it for? The record?" Friday came. Nadine went to work. She sat through a morning meeting about a telecom campaign, reviewed media plans, approved a buy for a fast food chain's national rollout. At 11:58, she excused herself, went to the washroom and looked at her own reflection in the mirror. She looked tired but steady. She thought about Chloe asking if Dad was coming home. She thought about Miles and his bear and his arm hanging off the bed. At noon, the ad went live. The first sign that it had landed came 40 minutes later, when a colleague showed her something on his phone with a half-law. "Have you seen this? Someone bought ad space to call out a cheater right under some influencer's post. It's going viral." Nadine glanced at it. "Wild," she said, and went back to her desk. By 2 o'clock it was everywhere. Not just Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, the comment sections of Toronto lifestyle blogs. Someone on Reddit's Our Toronto thread had already identified the original post. They were cross-referencing the lake house in the background, pulling up real estate listings in Muskoka, dissecting the shirt in the selfie like forensic analysts. The internet had caught the scent and it was running. Tessa Langley's follower count, which had been climbing steadily for months, flatlined and then began to drop. Brands started quietly pulling their sponsorship deals. Her agent, she had an agent, released a statement calling the ad a targeted harassment campaign and threatening legal action against the anonymous buyer. But Nadine hadn't put her name on it. She'd used a numbered company, registered through Ruth's office, with no public-facing connection to Nadine Ashford. The ad itself contained no names, no identifiable information, no defamatory claims. "He cheated here" was a statement. The supporting text referenced my family's cottage, my husband's shirt. Opinion, personal account, protected speech. Julian called her at 3. "Have you seen what's happening online?" His voice was tight, controlled, the way it got when a deal was going sideways at the firm. "I've been in meetings all day. What's going on?" Someone bought an ad. On Instagram, it's showing up under. It's about Tessa. Nadine let the silence stretch. She could hear him breathing. She could hear, beneath the control, the first crack of panic. "Who's Tessa?" she said. "Nadine Julian, I'm at work. Who is Tessa? And why are you calling me about an Instagram ad?" He didn't answer for a long time. She listened to the silence and felt nothing she expected to feel. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just the steady, clear-eyed calm of a woman who had already made her decisions and was watching them unfold. "We need to talk," he said finally. "Yes," she said, "we do. But not today. Today I have a 4 o'clock with Bell Media. We'll talk this weekend. I'll arrange for the kids to stay with my mother." She hung up. That evening, Ingrid finally got through. She showed up at Nadine's door with a bottle of wine and a look on her face that was equal parts horror and awe. "Was it you? Come in." They sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Nadine had stood 5 days earlier staring at her phone. Ingrid poured wine. Nadine didn't touch hers. "It's everywhere, Nad." The Globe's lifestyle section picked it up, Blog TO's running a piece. CP24 mentioned it in their afternoon segment. "They're calling it the most elegant takedown in Canadian internet history. They're being dramatic. You bought ad space under your husband's mistress's Instagram post." "That's not dramatic. I don't even know what that is." "Media strategy." Ingrid stared at her. "Are you okay?" Nadine considered the question honestly. "No, but I'm clear. And right now that's more useful." That night, after Ingrid left, Nadine sat on the edge of Chloe's bed. Her daughter was still awake, book open on her chest, watching her mother with those careful 11-year-old eyes. "Mom, what's happening?" "What do you mean, love?" "You and Dad are being weird. He called 3 times tonight and you didn't answer." Nadine looked at her daughter and made a decision she'd been turning over for days. Not the full truth. Chloe was 11, not 30. "But Dad and I are going through a hard time. It's not about you or Miles. It's between us." "Are you getting divorced?" "I don't know yet. But whatever happens, you and Miles are the most important people in both our lives. That doesn't change. Why is it hard? Because sometimes people make choices that hurt the people they love. And then everyone has to figure out what to do next." Chloe was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Is Dad the one who made the bad choice?" Nadine didn't lie. "Yes." "Okay." Chloe pulled her book back up. "I still want to go to the X. We'll figure it out." She kissed Chloe's forehead, checked on Miles, still asleep, bear relocated to his chest, and went downstairs. She sat at the kitchen table in the dark and let herself feel it. All of it. The grief, the betrayal, the rage she'd been holding at arm's length while she executed her plan with the mechanical focus of a professional. It hit her now, in the quiet of her own house, with her children sleeping upstairs and her husband somewhere across the city, trying to figure out how his world had cracked open. She cried, not for long, but enough. Saturday morning, Julian arrived at the house. He looked like he hadn't slept. He sat across from her at the dining table, the one they'd bought together at an antique market in Elora. The summer they'd first started talking about having kids, and he tried to explain. It had started 6 months ago. A chance meeting at an event his firm co-sponsored. Tessa was a guest, something to do with brand partnerships. He'd been flattered by the attention. One drink became dinner, became a weekend, became a pattern. He said the words Nadine expected him to say. It didn't mean anything, it was a mistake. He'd already ended it. "You hadn't ended it," Nadine said. "She was at the cottage last weekend, in our bed, wearing your shirt." Julian's face went gray. "How did you?" "She posted it, Julian, on Instagram, for 43,000 people to see." He put his head in his hands. Nadine watched him. She thought about the version of herself who might have reached across the table, who might have softened, who might have said, "We can work through this." That version existed somewhere, but she wasn't in this kitchen. "Was that you?" he asked, not looking up. "The ad, yes." "Jesus, Nadine. Do you know what this is doing to me? My partners are asking questions. Clients are. Your mistress posted a selfie in our cottage, and you're asking me what I'm doing to you?" He stopped. He had no answer for that. Nadine noticed distantly that this was the same asymmetry the viewers of any story would notice. The cheating husband angry at the wife for responding, but not at the mistress for provoking. She filed that away, not because she was performing, but because clarity made her see everything now, including the patterns in her own marriage she'd been too close to recognize. I want a separation, she said. Ruth Pennington is handling my side. I'll need you to find your own representation. I'd prefer we do this respectfully for the kids. Nadine, please. The kids stay with me. You get weekends, alternating, once we've established the terms. The cottage goes on the market. I won't fight you on the rest as long as the receipts stay fully funded. Can we at least? No. Her voice was quiet, not cold. Just finished. You made your choices, Julian. I made mine. Now we live with them. He left an hour later. Miles asked where Dad went. Nadine said Dad had some things to take care of. And how about pancakes? Miles said yes to pancakes. Chloe said nothing, but she set the table without being asked, and she put out 4 plates before catching herself and putting one back. The following week, the story grew. It grew because the internet loves a narrative with a villain and a heroine and a perfect, devastating punchline. Someone identified the cottage through the listing photos. It had been on MLS years ago, and suddenly people were driving up to Muskoka to take selfies in front of it. A Toronto artist painted a mural on a building in Kensington Market. 3 words in white on black, "He cheated here," with a small red dot like a location pin. Tessa Langley tried to get ahead of it. She posted a tearful video, later deleted, saying she hadn't known he was married. This was immediately debunked by someone who'd found comments on Tessa's older posts where friends had referred to "your married man" with laughing emojis. Her sponsorships evaporated. Her agent dropped her. She deactivated her account, then reactivated it, then deactivated it again. Julian's firm released a brief internal statement acknowledging a personal matter involving one of our partners and requested that staff refrain from commenting publicly. 2 of his largest clients quietly transferred their files to other partners. His corner office, the one with the view of the CN Tower, started to feel very large and very empty. A reporter from the Globe and Mail reached out to Nadine through her agency's general inbox. "Can you confirm that you authorized the promoted post that appeared beneath Tessa Langley's Instagram content? Is this intended as a public statement?" Nadine didn't respond. She didn't need to. The ad had spoken for itself. 3 words, a few lines of context, placed with the precision of someone who understood exactly how attention works and where it lands hardest. She did, however, sit down with Chloe and Miles that week, both of them on the couch, and tell them, in language an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old could hold, that Mum and Dad were going to live in separate homes for a while, that it wasn't their fault, that both their parents loved them completely and that wasn't going to change. Miles asked if he could bring his bear to Dad's new place. Nadine said of course. Chloe asked if this was about the Instagram thing. Nadine said it was about a lot of things and that some of them were complicated, but the part that mattered, the part about their family, was simple. "You and Miles come first. Always. Even before the ad?" Chloe asked, and there was the faintest ghost of a smile. "Especially before the ad." The divorce proceedings moved forward through the autumn. Nadine and Julian communicated through their lawyers, mostly, and directly only when it concerned the children. He was cooperative, which surprised her, and then didn't surprise her, because Julian had always been pragmatic, and he knew the math didn't favor him in any scenario where public sympathy was a factor. The cottage sold in October to a couple from Kitchener who thought the notoriety was funny. They kept the green Adirondack chairs. Nadine went back to work. She took on a new account, a women's financial services startup, and poured into it the same focus she'd poured into her 3-word campaign. Her colleagues treated her with a mix of respect and wariness. The way you treat someone you've just discovered has capabilities you hadn't accounted for. Ingrid asked her once, over coffee on a gray November morning in a cafe on Danforth, if she regretted it. The ad? All of it. The ad, the way it went public, the fact that your divorce is basically a news story now. Nadine stirred her coffee. Outside, a streetcar rattled past, and a man in a blue jacket walked a dog through the wet leaves. "I regret that my children have to carry this. I regret that Chloe knows more than an 11-year-old should have to know about why marriages end. I regret that Miles asked me last week if Dad left because of something he did. But the ad itself? No, because if I hadn't done it, if I'd confronted Julian privately, cried it out with you over wine, signed the papers quietly, the story would have been his to control. He would have told his partners it was mutual. He would have told his family we grew apart. He would have rewritten the whole thing, so that nobody was the villain and nobody was hurt, and it was just one of those things. She took a sip of her coffee. I didn't let him do that. I put the truth in the one place he couldn't edit it. Ingrid looked at her for a long time. You're terrifying, you know that? I'm a media strategist. Same thing. Winter came to Toronto, the way it always does. Slowly, then all at once. Nadine hung lights on the Leaside house, bought a tree with Chloe and Miles, and hosted Christmas morning alone with the children for the first time. Julian picked them up at noon. They were polite to each other at the door. Chloe hugged them both. Miles brought his bear. In January, Nadine was invited to speak at a conference on digital media ethics. She almost said no. Then she thought about the women who'd sent her messages. Hundreds of them, from across the country and beyond. Saying her 3 words had meant something to them. Not because they wanted revenge. Because they wanted to be seen. Because they were tired of being the ones who absorbed the damage quietly while someone else controlled the story. She said yes. She stood at the podium in a hotel ballroom in downtown Toronto, in a navy blazer she'd bought for herself, and she didn't talk about Julian or Tessa or the Cottage. She talked about message, audience, and placement. She talked about who gets to tell the story, and what happens when the person with the least power takes control of the platform. She talked about 3 words on a white background and the 47 million impressions they generated in 72 hours. At the end, someone in the audience asked, "Do you think of yourself as a symbol? A feminist icon?" Nadine smiled. It was the first real smile she'd allowed herself in public in months. "I think of myself as a woman who knew where to place an ad." The applause was not thunderous. It didn't need to be. It was steady, measured, and it came from people who understood exactly what she'd done and how much it had cost her. She drove home after the conference, through the dark January streets, past the frozen lake in High Park, past the quiet houses with their porch lights on. She parked in her driveway and sat for a moment, with the engine running and the heat blowing and the radio playing something soft she didn't recognize. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, standing in this same kitchen staring at a phone screen, deciding what to do with the wreckage of her marriage. She thought about the lake house and the cedar beams and the green chairs on the dock. She thought about Julian's blue shirt on someone else's body and the caption that had unraveled everything. Some places just feel like home. She turned off the car. She went inside. Chloe was at the kitchen table doing homework. Miles was on the floor building something elaborate out of Lego, his bear supervising from the couch. "Hey, Mom," Chloe said, without looking up. "How was the thing?" "Good. Did you tell them about the ad?" "Sort of." Chloe looked up then, and for a second Nadine saw something in her daughter's face that was older than 11. A knowingness, an understanding, a recognition that her mother was someone who had been broken and had chosen, deliberately and precisely, how to put herself back together. "Cool," Chloe said, and went back to her homework. Nadine hung up her coat. She put the kettle on. She sat down at the table across from her daughter, and she breathed. Not because it was over. It wasn't over. The divorce would take months. Julian would remarry eventually. Tessa would reinvent herself under a new handle with a new aesthetic and a curated redemption arc. The internet would move on to the next outrage, the next hero, the next 3-word headline. But in this kitchen, in this house, in this life, she was building out of the pieces of the one that had shattered. Nadine Ashford was exactly where she was supposed to be. The kettle whistled. She poured 2 cups. One for herself and one for Chloe, who'd started drinking chamomile tea in the evenings because she said it helped her think. They sat together in the warm kitchen light, mother and daughter, and they didn't talk about ads or algorithms or the architecture of public reckoning. They talked about homework and the dog Chloe wanted, and whether March break was too early to start planning a trip to Nova Scotia to see Grandma. Outside, the city hummed its winter hum. Inside, the house held steady. And somewhere on the internet, on a mural in Kensington Market, on the screens of strangers who would never meet her, 3 words still glowed in the dark like a lighthouse. Nobody had asked for, but everyone could see.